Hello, my friends. Rob Roselli coming to you once again on Not Fox News Network. Today being Thursday, February the 23rd, 2017. And as usual, the world, the insanity is careening out of control. Okay, and we'll get to that in a couple minutes, which we shouldn't be surprised because the god of chaos, known as Pan, or Osiris, or Apollo, Lucifer, is in charge. Okay, he's in charge of the money changers, who are in turn in charge of all the central banks in the world, who are in turn in charge of us. So if you think Donald Trump is running the show, you would be sorely mistaken. Okay, but be that as it may, again, the website boxofsunglasses.com, Twitter at Rob Roselli, and the Facebook Rob Roselli 1. Okay, don't forget the books. Pleased to meet you. I realize it's backwards, but you get the point. The Un-American Genocidal Complex with our friend Robert Christian, builder of the Georgia Guidestones. Okay, the Skull and Bones, the 322, March 22nd. Obamacare was signed, remember, March 22nd, 2010. Okay, 30 years to the date of the establishment of these things. Okay, the United Nations building, which is facilitating the whole mess. Okay, the environmental movement, the world government, the genocidal maniacs, the psychopaths and the control freaks at the United Nations. The Rockefeller founded the United Nations. Okay, the same group that gave us this guy. The same bunch that's behind all these so-called left-wing groups, the useful idiots, the anarchists. Okay, so the worshippers of Pan and filthy lucre, 1 Timothy 6, are working for this guy, okay, who gave us this. And now we're just on the verge of just outright anarchy, civil war, societal breakdown, all that fun stuff. Okay, so just a reminder. The most important thing to keep in mind throughout these discussions, I'm not quite sure where it's going to go myself. I try to generally plan, but I can't quite be sure where it's all going to go. But the most important thing to remember is God's simple salvation plan. Okay, and that's available as a link on my site, boxofsunglasses.com. Okay, and then the other night, what did we talk about? We talked about a lot of stuff. Okay, that would be the February 21st, and I'll get those posted on the YouTube channel. If you want to go back, I'll refer to some past videos, but they're all there with descriptions. Again, if you go to boxofsunglasses.com, you can click right through to the YouTube channel and look at all the archives. Okay, but one thing we did discuss that's relevant in terms of the headlines, okay, the vitriol and the hatred aimed at Donald Trump, okay, which really, again, I can't emphasize this enough, is not really intended for Donald Trump. Okay, it's intended for America itself. I'm not completely sold on the man. Can't say I agree with everything he does. Is he a Christian? Is he not a Christian? Look, who knows? Okay, hopefully he has his Damascus Road moment, or he's converted like the people of ancient Nineveh, okay, of the Assyrian Empire, or Nebuchadnezzar, going back to the book of Daniel. Be that as it may, okay, he does, on the surface at least, unless he's being very deceptive, and again, who really ultimately knows, but the point is, the people that oppose him think he's legit, okay? So today there was a story that came across that even have these witches who are tied into, they call themselves Queen Jezebel. They're associated with Queen Jezebel. Okay, a self-admitted coven of witches praying for some kind of witch or demonic attack on Donald Trump. Now, that's very interesting, okay, because as I've been saying, okay, the feminist movement, okay, it's not about women's rights. It's these bloodthirsty so-called women and so-called men, okay, that are involved. The overwhelming majority of it is this bloodlust for killing babies, known as abortion, okay, which is really, and still is, started out as Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, her Negro Project, okay, we've discussed that at length on past videos, but the original intent of the abortion industry, well, it is an industry, was to eliminate black people, okay? Which is kind of funny with the social justice warriors and, these black college students wanting to separate themselves from white people and all this, and except, I guess, when it comes to aborting their unborn babies, then they'll have no problem seeing a white doctor as they're genocided out of existence, but, thanks to the liberal, progressive Negro Project. But anyway, the point is that this is the same wellspring of demonism from the Old Testament. The Queen Jezebel, King Ahab, going back to 1 Kings 18. The worshippers of Baal, child sacrifice. Okay, children were sacrificed in many Old Testament and ancient cultures in general. Okay, to satisfy the sun god Baal or Quetzalcoatl or Dagon or Osiris. Okay, whatever name you wanted to give the god, and we're still doing that today. Okay, it's a little more indirect. It's a little more discreet. Okay, it's a little more circuitous. Okay, this child sacrifice, but have no doubt it still is happening, and it's known as abortion. Okay, if you think about it, many of these radical environmentalists / feminists / Mayday Beltane freaks, which you talked about the other day, by the way. If you go back to just as an aside, parentheses, whatever, keep an eye on that date, May 1st. It's very significant to the Beltane anarchist nature freak crowd. Okay, remember the month of May, or Maya, the mother goddess. It's another name for the mother goddess, the mother of Hermes. Okay, which again, I tied into Robert Christian, or Satan himself. Okay, the 18th, the Rosy Cross, the Rosicrucian degree of Freemasonry, male plus female, rose plus the cross. So anyway, end parentheses. Okay, the female side of that equation is where these witches are coming from. Okay, and again, it's child sacrifice, because what are they sacrificing to, Gaia or Mother Earth? Because abortion is seen not just as elimination of the Negro race, its original intent, because, they're not evolved as white people. Us white people are smarter than black people, and they can't evolve. And that's Charles Darwin talking. Margaret Sanger said, instead of institutionalizing them, why let them be born at all? Let's just kill them in the womb. That's basically it. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. But anyway, the modern environmental movement, the population control freaks, okay, of which Hitler was just a minor subset, as discussed in this book. They believe in abortion as a population control measure. So what is it? We need to control a population to save Gaia or Mother Earth, or the female principle. And this is the same wellspring of Queen Jezebel demonic activity from the Old Testament. So today they give it the facade of, population control, protecting the planet, the Gaia hypothesis. Okay, do you see where this is going? Okay, now this gets into Rome, to the book of Romans chapter 1, where Paul says, professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. Okay, so you can kind of see where this is all going. Not where it's going, where it is. Okay, in modern day America. So the pressure cooker, the pressure's building. Okay, it's just coming everywhere. Okay, if you just peruse the headlines, and I'm not talking about even the Fox News, they can't hide this stuff anymore. But those jokers on Fox News who can't figure out if a speeding truck full of pressurized gas canisters that the police have to shoot at with an unnamed Swedish national, they can't figure out if that's a terrorist attack or not. But even those Nimrods, those morons on Fox News, you can't hide these headlines. Okay, the evil is bubbling over. Okay, and we can see it in things like a witch's coven praying that Donald Trump is, attacked by demons or witches or some kind of evil spirits, or whatever these freaks are wishing for. And I'm telling you, people think that this is funny and laugh it off and ha, it's all a big joke. I got news for you. You're paying for it. Okay, you're paying for it in terms of taxpayer-funded abortion, which, as I just said, is really a genocidal population control measure in honor of saving Mother Earth or Gaia, or the cross portion of the Rosy Cross or the Rosicrucians. That all ties back to the Egyptian whore goddess Isis, the Babylonian whore goddess Ishtar, Diana of Greek mythology. Okay, Artemis. I think in Roman she was known as Diana. And there's many other names, okay? Hathor, well, okay. But basically all the female goddesses all kind of spring from that Queen Jezebel wellspring of witches and Mother Earth and Gaia and worshiping the earth to the whore of Babylon in Revelation 17. So if you think this is all a big joke or it's funny, again, I got news for you. We're neck deep in it, especially here in the United States. Okay, this child sacrifice known as the Planned Parenthood. Maybe on the next show next week, we can just go into the specifics. Okay, I'm reading about this Dr. Gosnell in Philadelphia who was recently convicted of murder. Now, even Fox News, this so-called conservative Fox News, they didn't really cover this too much. At least, maybe I missed it. Okay, WorldNet Daily covered it, and there are a couple books out there, but the upshot is, here's a guy that had baby body parts all over his office, was administering anesthesia with basically intern-level so-called nurses. All right, at least one or two poor black mothers were killed by this man in botched abortions. Okay, baby body parts everywhere, babies being flushed down toilets, baby feet and hands stuck in freezers and mason jars around this guy's office. Okay, this is America. This is Philadelphia. Now, how ironic is that? Okay, Philadelphia, named after the only really good church of the 7 churches mentioned in the first chapter of Revelation, or the second chapter. I don't remember off the top of my head, but the Church of Philadelphia, after which the city of Philadelphia was named, was the only real true church that God had no problem with of the 7 mentioned in the book of Revelation. Now, of course, the United States would be the Church of Laodicea, okay, which is the lukewarm church, which is, who cares, do as thou will, okay, which is a quote from Aleister Crowley, who was intertwined with these guys we talked about the other night, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, the Obama Rising O here, in honor of their father Lucifer, the triangle up and down. But anyway, the point is, the Church of Laodicea, do as thou wilt, as long as you're not hurting me, as long as I got my free Federal Reserve notes flowing and welfare checks or the SNAP cards or the EBT cards, I don't really care if there's a doctor in an industry that literally flushes babies down a toilet, here in the so-called Christian and civilized United States. Okay, that's the spirit of Queen Jezebel. Okay, these maniacs, these psychopaths, this John McCain and Pharaoh Barry and others, and John Kerry are ready to start a war, world war, remember, overtaking Syria because supposedly Assad used chemical weapons on his own people, which was a lie in and of itself. That's not really the point here, but even if it was true, who the hell are we? Okay, we crush a baby's skull with forceps and suck its brains out with a catheter and throw the corpse into a toilet or burn it for clean energy, and we're going to go around preaching to the world about how great we are and how you need to conform to democracy. God hates us, hates America. I'll say that literally. You think God of infinite compassion and mercy doesn't hate you. You're listening to these bozos, these goofballs, these preachers, these con men on these so-called Christian networks, and it's all fun and games and Christian rock and all this stupidity. Read about the Church of Laodicea, okay? And in the book of Micah, I believe it is, okay, God says he hated Esau. Okay, do you remember Jacob and Esau? Esau was born first, and then Jacob came next. And I don't want to go into that whole thing right now, but God hates the United States. I'm pretty confident of that. I'm not talking about individual salvation now. That's different. Okay, but I'm talking about as a nation. Okay, I'm talking about a nation that goes and invades a sovereign foreign nation because they have weapons of mass destruction. And remember Saddam Hussein in the first Gulf War? It was Saddam Hussein was removing babies. Remember, he had a Syrian girl. So those of you that remember, Saddam Hussein was taking babies off their life support systems and all this in Kuwait and all this, which was proven to be false, by the way. It was all a PR stunt. The Bush family, the skull and bone Bush family. But anyway, again, if that were true, even if that were true, we should be carpet bombing Washington, D.C. All right? We should be carpet bombing Philadelphia. Okay? Because what's done with the abortion, the born alive abortions, okay, babies that are born alive, like in this so-called Dr. Gosnell, that have their heads ripped off and their spines broken and then flushed down toilets and their limbs chopped off. That was the motivation to get us involved in the first Gulf War, okay? Just the blatant hypocrisy of this nation is disturbing, okay? This is why there's no doubt that the United States is the mystery Babylon of Revelation. We don't even make it to the Battle of Armageddon, okay? And I mentioned that. Okay, there will be a Battle of Armageddon. In Israel, I believe physical Israel will be surrounded and God will save the last of the Israelites because he feels sorry for them, not because they deserve it. That's spelled out in Ezekiel 36, okay? But I guess the point here is stop listening to these stupid con men, so-called Bible scholars and their comic book Antichrist. The Antichrist is Hermes, this Greek god Hermes. Okay, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. This is one of the cornerstones of the New Age movement right here. Okay, in honor of the Greek god Hermes. And in this book, by the way, they call out Robert Christian or Christian Rose Cross as our father. That quote is in here. Okay, I promise you, it's in here. Okay, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Now they're calling the guy. Remember the 18th degree of Freemasonry who gave us these things, who called for the deaths of 6.5 out of 7 billion people, Robert Christian. Okay. The same group that gave us this guy. Okay. And as I've been saying, Hitler's a flea. Hitler's nothing. Okay. Hitler killed maybe 15 million people. Okay. Undesirables. Just like we do in America through abortion and eugenics. Hitler just picked up on our ideas, okay? Hitler's Bush League. Hitler's nothing, okay? If it were baseball, had the major leagues, I'm not even sure Hitler makes it out of Tidewater or single A baseball, okay? In terms of mass genocide, okay, 15 maybe he's throwing his part in World War II, which. Really, he was funded by the Rockefeller family and the other Federal Reserve criminals, the money changers. Okay, the money changers that Jesus, the Lamb of God, who came to be sacrificed, that was his only job, was to sacrifice himself on the cross for humanity, who forgave the people that were, the Roman soldiers that were nailing him to the cross, but chase the money changers with whips. It's kind of funny, in a way, if you think about it, okay? The Lamb of God, who was supposed to be represents the perfect sacrifice, all the sins of mankind, who came in peace, the Prince of Peace, hated these guys so much, he chased them out of the temple with whips, okay? So that's kind of a preview. If that's what Jesus, who rode into Jerusalem on a donkey, coming in peace, and the next day he's chasing these guys out of the temple with whips. There's a powerful message in that, and hopefully it's starting to sink in as to why he did that. Okay. This is when you follow the money trail. Again, when you follow the money trail up to these anarchists, the abortion, the eugenics, the Hitlers, the Federal Reserve. In other words, the quote conspiracy, you get to the narrow part of the pyramid, the unfinished. There's Lucifer / Apollo or Apollyon, who are two different entities, by the way. Okay. Lucifer, Thoth, Hermes, the giver of wisdom and language and mathematics and knowledge, the travel god, is relatively harmless, okay, who I believe is the real Satan, okay. He just wants control of the world, okay. But the real Apollo or Apollyon, that are imprisoned in Tartarus or hell or Hades or whatever you want to call it, which is the real Osiris of Egyptian mythology. They just want to kill. Okay. There's no gray area. Okay. So, but the point is that we're on the verge of this pure evil. Okay. And then, but I don't want to really go off into the Steve Quayle territory and talking about CERN and all this sort of thing, but that's what he talks about. Okay. And I don't know Steve Quayle from a hole in the wall. He doesn't know me, but I'm not going to sit here and regurgitate his information. If you want to find out more about that, then you can go Google him or stevequayle.com. I don't care. I have no obligation to him. He doesn't have to me, but he's really the source, the go-to source for that sort of thing. But anyway, the point is that this pandemonium is breaking out all over the place, and we're seeing it daily. The pressure is building. Okay, so again, it's God's simple salvation plan is the key to this whole thing. Okay, the key to surviving this whole thing. I don't know what else to say beyond that. Okay, now the way we can visualize what's going to happen. Okay, is John Carpenter's movie In the Mouth of Madness. Okay, if you want to find out how things are really going to break down and how it's really going to go down, that's your movie right there. Okay, it's not a well-known movie, but I believe in very accurate description of where this is all leading. Okay, and it's pandemonium, it's chaos, it's anarchy to the nth degree. It's war, economic collapse, natural calamities, Fukushima. Okay, the radiation from Fukushima that nobody talks about. Not Fox News doesn't even mention it. Okay, Elmo. I saw Elmo on there last week on Fox News. Elmo dancing around. Okay, he got the worst radiation, worst nuclear disaster in the history of the world. Worse than Chernobyl. Worse than the nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And nobody's talking about it. Okay, so you got that whole thing going. Trump's not going to stop that. Okay, you got the geoengineering that's ongoing, and I can't keep up. I think there's a website out there called Geoengineering Watch, but what you really got to do is just look up at the sky and watch the chemtrails being painted across the sky from horizon to horizon. Maybe a dozen or more times of crisscrossing chemtrails, and all of a sudden a beautiful blue sunny day becomes, you get this gray hazy sky. I mean, that's my geoengineering watch. Okay. So we're being bombarded with chemicals and particles, and President Trump, he's not stopping this. Okay. Trump's problem is he's taking, just like JFK, he's taking the job of presidency seriously, and really he's supposed to be just a seat warmer. Okay, the presidency is for minor leaguers. It's for little people, the low levels of the quote conspiracy, the Bushes, the Clintons, and these kinds of people. Okay, these are the ones that shoot for this joke called the United States presidency. Trump is a little better than that. He's actually trying to take the job seriously, but there's way too much. Okay, remember in Matthew 4 and Luke 4, I mean, Satan pretty much tells Jesus, who's the image of God, or God incarnate, or the Word became flesh, or he's the image of God, tells him, I own the world. All right, so if he owns the world, and then it's always been in his ownership, in other words. Okay, the world's given over to him, and what we're seeing right now is the manifestation of that ownership. Okay, and we went through this. Okay, I realize that there's a lot of people in history, a lot of people right now that never heard of God, never sat in a Catholic church, or never had their head washed, and never got rid of original sin, or never went to a confession with a pedophile priest, or never heard of just the basic Bible. Okay, those people will be judged a lot more leniently. Luke 12:47 and 48, Romans chapter 2. Okay, the people of Nineveh in the book of Jonah, people that never heard of God, never had the opportunity, will be judged, but a lot more leniently. Okay, Acts chapter 17, the Apostle Paul says, in the past God winked at your mythologies and your beliefs. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but it means he's being pretty lenient. Okay, I just mentioned a bunch of other verses. So that being said, the flip side of that is that people that have God or know God, okay, i.e. the United States, a political miracle founded on Christian principles, has degraded to the point where we flush live babies down the toilet, have witches openly praying for the demise of the sitting president, okay, who call themselves Queen Jezebel, one of the worst characters from the Old Testament, okay. Now, if you read 1 Kings 18, you had the prophets of Baal, okay, who were associated with Ahab, which was Jezebel's husband, and you had Jezebel's prophets, okay. They were burned alive. Okay, the prophets of Baal were burned alive, and those ones that weren't burned alive by God, Elijah told the Israelites to chase them down and kill them all. Okay, so how do you think, if that's what happened in the Old Testament, that doesn't bode well for the United States, okay, which cites the Creator in its Declaration of Independence, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You know, the First Continental Congress opened with the 35th Psalm, and now we flush babies down the toilet. Okay, think of the church Laodicea, the seventh church, the seventh and final church mentioned in Revelation. That is the United States. Okay, we keep coming back to that. All right, and maybe next time we'll have that. I don't have it in front of me right now. We'll read up a little bit on our friend Dr. Gosnell, who people don't really know about. And then I'll just say this again, another important item to remember, and I know a lot of so-called biblical scholars are going to disagree with me on this, and that's fine. I'll just read right out of Matthew 24. Okay. This is Matthew 24, we'll go 36. But of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. So that's pretty straightforward. Okay, so Jesus didn't know, at least when he was in his human form. The angels of heaven don't know. What gives these imbeciles, what gives Hal Lindsey or Tim LaHaye the right or the ability to think that they know the time and the hour of Jesus' return? This is why someone like Hal Lindsey writes about, says the rapture is going to occur in 1988, because he's so far off the mark. He couldn't find the ground if it weren't for gravity. Okay, a guy like Hal Lindsey, right? He's so wrong on the Jews as God's chosen people, that he's so wrong on what a generation really is. This is why he can sit there and say the rapture is going to occur in 1988, because it's one generation. That's 40 years after the reestablishment of Israel, God's chosen people, in 1948. Okay, they take the most simplistic, idiotic view of the Bible and Revelation in particular. It's like they skipped the whole Bible and went right to Revelation. Okay, and they just try to interpret it, and they just come up with these idiotic conclusions. Okay, but that's pretty clear. Okay. As the days of Noah were, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. Okay, remember the flood of Noah. Okay, everybody was laughing at Noah who was building his ark, which represents Jesus, by the way, the ark of the wooden, the boat that Noah was building. Okay, and there's numerical connections for that, which I don't really want to get into right now, but he spent 120 years building it, which just so happens to be the age of Moses. Okay. No, I don't want to go into that right now, but anyway, then he goes, jump down, watch ye therefore, for you know not what hour your Lord doth come. But know this, that if the good man of the house had known in what watch the thief would come, he would have watched and would not have suffered his house be broken up. So if Satan, the ruler of this world, knew the hour himself, he'd be ready for it. Okay, so it's going to come very quickly. It's going to come and go very quickly. So how these people can say there's going to be a 1260-day tribulation period and two witnesses, running around in Jerusalem, shooting people with darts or flamethrowers or whatever he's going to be doing, and then be taken up at the end of... So ridiculous. Okay, how can you take that literally? And, Jesus, they would contradict Matthew 24. Okay? Because then you'd say, all right, the two witnesses started today. I'm going to count 1260 days, and it doesn't make, that's your 7-year tribulation. It's so ridiculous. But the two witnesses, by the way, if you want to see a description of the two witnesses, you can read about it in Psalm 79. Okay, that King David uses language that reads exactly like the two witnesses described in Revelation 11. Okay. But anyway, and here's this parable at the end of Matthew 24. Okay. Therefore be also ready, for you in such an hour as you think not, the Son of Man cometh. Who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his Lord made ruler over his household, to give them meat in due season? Blessed is that servant whom his Lord, when he cometh, shall find so doing. Verily I say unto you, that he shall make him ruler over all his goods. So the servant that's working, that's harvesting souls, that's getting other people, bringing other people to Jesus. Okay, that's the work. Okay. 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, if you don't work, then you won't eat. There's a physical and there's also a spiritual side to that. Okay, that's 2 Thessalonians chapter 3. Okay. And I believe it's James chapter 2. Okay. The Apostle Paul says, you should be working, but the work is this harvesting that's described in this parable at the end of Matthew 24. Okay, it's not a physical. In other words, the Sabbath rest means you don't have to do all these ridiculous circumcision and water baptism and all these things that God had, the Levitical priest had to do in the Old Testament, all these procedures. That's all done away with. Okay, Jesus, remember when he said it is finished, okay, what happened? The curtain in front of the Holy of Holies was ripped in half, okay, which represents direct access to God. So all that stuff, all that washing, all that cleansing, all those procedures that the so-called, God's chosen people still do today. And if you read, I think it's James chapter 1, he says, he who tries to follow law and breaks one minor rule of law is guilty of the entire law. So in other words, if you think you're following everything that's in every law of God in the Old Testament, and you curse or have an evil thought or do something, which we all do. I mean, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. You're guilty of every sin that's in the book of the law, the Ten Commandments. It's essentially what James, the book of James is saying. Okay. But anyway, so that's what's really being discussed here in this parable at the end of Matthew 24. But here, this is interesting. And if that evil servant shall say in his heart, my Lord delayeth his coming, and shall begin to smite his fellow servants, and to eat and drink with the drunken, drink and drunk with the drunken. Now, who's the god of wine and revelry and drunkenness but our friend, the god Pan? Okay, the god of pandemonium and chaos. Which, remember, as I said, we're on the verge of societal-wide chaos in honor of the horned god known as Pan. Okay, and in Revelation 9 is known as Apollo or Apollyon or Osiris. Okay. So that quote, mythology that we keep running into isn't really mythology, is it? Okay. But be that as it may, the Lord of that servant shall come in a day when he looketh not for him, and in an hour that he is not aware of, and shall cut him asunder, and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. That's weeping and gnashing of teeth. That's the anger and pain of the wrath of God described, or beginning to be described in Revelation, the sixth seal, okay, and in Revelation 16, okay, the wrath that true Christians won't be around for. Now, we are going to have tribulation, and there has been tribulation going on since Jesus' death, okay. Remember, John 16, Jesus says, in the world you will have tribulation, but be strong or be confident, I have overcome the world. So the tribulation started right after his death, okay, when Stephen in Acts chapter 7 was stoned to death. Okay, the Christians were being fed to lions and burned for light by Nero in the Roman Empire, tortured by the so-called Christian Catholic Church for merely reading or trying to distribute the Bible. Okay, today in these so-called religion of peace in many of these foreign countries. Okay, Christians are being burned alive inside churches. Okay, so you think they're not experiencing tribulation? You think the tribulation is going to be some stupid 7-year period that, that Tim LaHaye says, well, you Christians buying my books and buying my wares, don't worry about it. You don't have to worry about that tribulation. You're going to be raptured out of here. It doesn't work like that. Okay. To me, to say the tribulation is 7 years or the Great Tribulation is an insult to those martyrs, both of today and the past 2,000 years. Okay, we don't. That's not tribulation. Of course it is. Okay, now you can read about that, and Paul saying, we have tribulation, but God's going to repay those people in wrath and in tribulation. Now, will there be a maximization, and will there be an acceleration, and will this tribulation become wholesale? Of course. Yeah, of course it is. Okay, and we're starting to see that now. Okay, this Trump presidency is kind of the eye of the storm that's kind of holding it at bay for the time being. But when he's gone, he may be gone sooner than we think. The revenge, the bloodlust of these people that hate Trump and hate America and hate Christians, it's going to know no bounds. Okay, that's Satan's last gasp. Yeah, then the so-called, the tribulation will be great. But it's more of a semantics issue, but it's just another example of how wrong a lot of these bozos really are. Okay? To sit here and say, you're going to have a 7-year tribulation, and at the end of the 7-year, I just read, no one knows the day or the hour, so how can you sit here and say that there's going to be a 1260-day this and this and that, and you can start counting down the days or these moons or that moon, and it's ridiculous. Okay, that's what this parable is saying is, nobody knows. Just keep your head down and your mouth shut, and so to speak, and harvest as many people as you can and save as many people as you can from what's coming, because what's coming can't be stopped. It was never meant to be stopped. Okay? So that's really the point. Okay, I guess this is the overriding message. We are seeing this bubbling over of evil and tribulation, okay, in our nation. Okay, an acceleration of the tribulation is more accurate. Don't wait around for an Israeli temple. Okay, the abomination of desolation. Okay, in the book of Daniel. Okay, people saying, what about the abomination of desolation? That's in Matthew 24, and maybe we can go through Matthew 24 at one point, but the abomination of desolation, and at the end of the book of Daniel, it says 1290 days to the abomination of desolation. Let's go read it real quick at the end of Daniel chapter 12. Okay, there shall be 1290 days from the time that the daily sacrifice is taken away to the abomination of desolation is set up shall be 1290 days. Okay, now the key word there is set up. The abomination of desolation to be set up. And in Matthew 24, Jesus says, when you shall see the abomination of desolation, not when it shall be set up. Okay, so the abomination of desolation was set up when Satan entered into Judas. Okay, it's not some stupid rebuilt temple. Remember, 1 Peter chapter 2 says the believers, with which Peter and the 12 apostles were the foundation, are the real church of Christ. Okay, the body of believers. And that's in Colossians chapter 1. You can, it's in Ephesians. Okay, Romans chapter 12. Okay, but the point is, Satan entered into Judas, and he was one of the original 12, the apostles, the New Testament apostles, which was the foundation. 12 represents the foundation, just like it was the dimensions of the 60 by 20 was the foundations of the Old Testament temple. Okay, the New Testament temple, or the foundation of the church, was the 12 apostles. One of them, by Jesus' own words in John 17, was a devil. Okay, Satan entered him in John chapter 12. So what could be more of an abomination than Satan himself entering into Judas, and then Judas leading the Pharisees and the Roman soldiers to arrest Jesus and have him killed. I mean, what could be worse than that? Okay, in God's eyes, nothing. Therefore, I believe that that is the abomination of desolation. Okay, because the Jews, God's chosen people, rejected God, rejected the kingdom of God. Remember, Jesus said, called himself the kingdom of God on many occasions. Okay, he did this in Luke chapter 4, and in Matthew chapter 12, the two places I can think of off the top of my head, the kingdom of God is here. I am the kingdom of God. So they rejected him and followed Judas, or who was Satan, who was one and the same with Satan. I mean, Jesus says it himself. He calls him a devil, the son of perdition, which is a name that John uses in 1 John, I think 1 John 3, the son of perdition. All right, so what could be worse than that? Okay, so if you start thinking in those terms, then it makes the book of Daniel a lot more understandable and make a lot more sense. Okay, but Jesus said, when you shall see the abomination of desolation, then run for the hills. Okay, then the end is near. No, not a specific, look, we're going to know the time and the seasons, but we're not going to know the specific hour and the day. And we are in that season. Okay, for me, I think we have seen the abomination of desolation when the aptly named President Obama. Okay, and I could be wrong. Maybe that'd be a more blatant sign, but that was pretty blatant to me when he put himself between the columns of Jacob and Boaz. Let's see if I can find an example of it here. Okay. Remember the other night we talked about this, the serpent climbing the tree of life, the Jewish Kabbalah, God's Jewish people. Okay, this is what the Jews, this is what they were sharing with their neighbors, by the way. This is the abomination of desolation. Okay. Taking this guy and this belief system, the Kabbalah, which is really goes all the way back to the Garden of Eden, taking that and rejecting Jesus and accepting that, which is what happened when Jesus was crucified, which is what really happened. Okay, besides the forgiveness of the world, of all the sins of the world. Okay, when Obama set himself up between the columns of Jacob and Boaz, the male plus the female. Remember Isis and Osiris, the two columns of Freemasonry. I'll see if I can find an example while I'm talking here. A very quick example of it. Represents this combination of the male and the female. Now, by him doing that, he basically said, I am God, or I am the son of God, of my mother Isis or Gaia, who we were talking about before, and Osiris, okay, who we were talking about before. Okay, and again, this gets into the whole, Greek mythology thing. Okay, the same concept of Cain. Remember Cain and Abel. Cain sleeping with his mother Eve. Okay, or Tammuz. Okay, the son of Semiramis. I think it's Samaris. Okay, the new form of Isis. Okay, the mother of Nimrod. Okay. But anyway, this concept of the mother-child relationship, okay, that's what's really at play here. Okay, again, that quote mythology, but anyway, not to go off on that tangent right now, but I can't really, can't really go into it right now too deeply, but anyway, this is Manly Hall, the Secret Teachings of All Ages, talking about the fraternity of the Rose Cross, the Rosy Cross, the Rosicrucians again. But as I said, you have to forgive me. I don't know the direction that this show is going to take on a particular night. But this is what I'm talking. Here's the Queen Mother I was talking about. See, Isis, okay, Eve, the mother goddess, okay, with the child, okay. So mother gave birth to Cain, okay. If you read the proper reading of the book of Genesis, then Cain slept with his wife. There's no other wife available except for Eve, okay. So I believe this is where this concept of, the child impregnating his own mother, okay, and then Cain impregnates his mother Eve, and she has a whole bunch of children, Jubal, okay, who ties them with the Jubalon of Freemasonry, okay, and then Jubal and Tubal Cain, okay, artificer of metals. And Jubal's an interesting character, okay, he's the inventor. He's given credit for the invention of music. Now, who do we associate music with? But our friend, the god Pan, or Pandemonium. Remember Pan with the horned god, okay, the two horns, spake as a dragon, Revelation 13, okay, the horned god. So is this stuff starting to add up, hopefully? Okay, I know I'm going off on tangents right now, but it all starts to make sense, okay? And by the way, that's also in if you read Deuteronomy, I think it's chapter 26, okay? I want to say off the top of my head now, it says, he who sleeps with his mother has uncovered his father's nakedness. Now, one of the most famous cases of uncovering the father's nakedness is Ham. Okay, remember, Ham uncovered Noah's nakedness back in Genesis. I don't remember the chapter off the top of my head. It would have to be around Genesis 7 or 8. But be that as it may, okay, Ham, who many associate with the Greek god Hermes, okay, or the Egyptian people, okay, uncovered his father's nakedness. So in the book of Deuteronomy, that means he slept with his own mother. So again, you have this concept of this son-mother combination, and what came out of that combination. But Nimrod, okay, you had Cush, then you had Nimrod. Okay, so out of that line, now Nimrod, again getting into Steve Quayle territory, which I don't want to get into. I'll just be regurgitating, and I don't know as much about that stuff as he does, so I just probably wasting your time. But anyway, that's the forerunner, okay, to that whole story is Pan, okay, or excuse me, Nimrod, okay, who became a mighty man and was in charge of the building of the Tower of Babel. Okay, remember Babylon, the Babel, the origin of the word confusion, which makes sense because, as I said, Pan is the god of pandemonium, panic, and chaos. He's the horned god, the two-horned god of Revelation 13. And as I've been saying, he makes Satan look mild by comparison. This is what people are really worshiping. Okay, Satan is just kind of the mouth. Okay, he's the mouth of the operation. Okay, he's the speaker. He's the god of wisdom, the trickster god Hermes. Okay, he's the one, the rose plus the cross. Okay, Robert Christian. Okay, so hopefully this is all this is starting to make sense. Okay, so in other words, I can't find an example right now, unfortunately. But anyway, the two columns of Freemasonry, the male and the female, okay, they represent, okay, the sun and the moon, or the male and the female, the moon being female, okay, the sun being male. And that's just it. Okay, so Obama, by placing himself as he did in the 2008 Democratic National Convention, he's basically saying to America, I am God. I am the Son of God. Okay, you will worship me. From a nation that opened up its history with the reading of the 35th Psalm, to Obama and flushing babies down the toilet, I guess is the point of tonight's show. Okay, and we're seeing it, this outbreak of chaos manifest itself in real time. Okay, so I'll conclude again, once again, God's Simple Salvation Plan, available on boxofsunglasses.com. Okay, good night and God bless.